Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's session. MLB combines Okta and OneTrust to earn audience trust through consent management. My name is Stephanie Hanson. I'm our offering manager of the CMP products here at OneTrust. I hold my FIP, CIPPE, and CIPM in privacy certifications from the IAPP. And I spend a lot of our time today with our customers directly, helping them implement solutions for consent and transparency in today's privacy landscape. I'm thrilled to be joined today by Neil. I'll allow Neil to introduce himself as well.
Hi, everybody. Neil Boland with Major League Baseball. I am the CISO here, and we are a customer of both OneTrust and Okta.
Thanks, Neil. So, for today's conversation, we're going to frame up the landscape a little bit and give some background on what we're seeing in the industry, the challenges and strategies that you can use to move forward in this landscape of privacy combined with consent and user choice. And we're going to spend the majority of today's session in an interactive conversation directly with Neil about how the team at MLB has used the Okta and OneTrust solutions to better connect with their customers. We are going to be able to monitor the questions in the chat as well. So throughout the session, if you'd like to go ahead and drop in any questions you have, we'll be sure to try to get those answered. Okay, so to kick things off and just frame things up a little bit, to share a brief background on who OneTrust is so you can appreciate where we're coming from in this landscape. OneTrust is a producer of technology used by organizations for privacy, security, and governance. And this includes our technology around transparency and consent and our consent management platform, or you'll hear us abbreviate that to CMP for short. At OneTrust, we have customers all over the globe, both big and small companies across over 100 different countries. And we have a global team supporting those customers to help roll out solutions for privacy laws, security laws, and changing regulations around the globe, making sure our customers can operationalize solutions to keep their businesses moving forward. Specifically in the area of consent and choice, we have a whole set of solutions under our Preference Choice brand, and we have been validated by external parties in the market to evaluate all of our solutions and make sure that we are providing those options for our customers to continue to evolve and enable marketing and security teams to move forward. So, for today's conversation, as mentioned, we're just going to frame it up to give everyone an understanding, if you're not as familiar with the privacy landscape, what's going on, what the challenges are, as well as some of the solutions before we dive into our panel discussion. So if we look at the compliance and privacy landscape, privacy is not new. It's something that has been evolving over time for quite a while. You saw this really get started and ramp up in Europe, originally with the e-privacy directive, which is a separate kind of cookie law across all the different countries within Europe in terms of how they implement and require different guidelines for cookie management across the web. Then we saw, of course, the introduction of GDPR, which went into effect in 2018 and had a huge impact on the privacy landscape globally. This allowed us to have a regulation across the European states that provided for a lot more consistency and direction moving forward. This also introduced some key concepts around understanding what data you have, how that data is flowing and shared with third parties, shared responsibility of data across controllers, but also processors of that data, and introduced clear outlined rights for data subjects and consent and choice for individuals. So GDPR really became a catalyst for privacy regulations to kick off around the globe further. And then we saw, of course, in 2020, the introduction of CCPA, or the California law, for residents of California to exercise their rights and express interest that companies and businesses not sell their personal information. Now, moving forward, we have additional privacy laws being drafted. We're still waiting on the e-privacy regulation. So moving from that directive towards more of a regulation across all of the European states along the cookie law. We may see that coming soon. But we also have additional state laws in the US. CCPA out of California is going to progress to become CPRA effective in 2023. We also just recently had Virginia CDPA passed. So lots of acronyms to keep up to date with. And OneTrust is always watching these regulatory updates and providing guidance and visibility so that you can look for similarities and differences across these laws and figure out how do you really move your business forward. So, continuing on this thread of the privacy regulations, it's not only the regulations and what the laws say that pose challenges. You also have the additional guidance and enforcement that comes out from the various regulators. Right? We've seen action from the UK ICO, for example, in terms of taking a very close look at ad tech and how that functions across the web today. But in addition to the laws and the regulators, we also have technology changes. And these technology changes are really forcing changes throughout the ecosystem. So when we say technology changes, we're thinking things like Apple's introduction of the app tracking transparency prompts in iOS 14.5. We're thinking Google's announcements of the deprecation of third-party cookies within the Chrome browser as planned out another year away. And really looking at these technology changes is forcing that shift. It's forcing organizations to get organized and think about how they adjust. And this has really introduced a huge opportunity for identity to play a key role in the landscape. As we look at the impact that these changes are having, we're also seeing that consumers have more choice and control potentially around the corner. We're also looking at the impact on ad targeting and a potential negative impact to how personalization and those experiences are delivered to consumers. So we want to look at the balance of choice and personalization. And when we look at what consumers are saying, we see the data coming in that consumers care about their privacy, that they're more willing to interact with businesses that give them choice and understand that. But on the flip side, they're seeing that we don't have that knowledge of which organizations are protecting our personal information. We're in the dark as consumers about who is looking out for us. So there's a real opportunity here to increase the transparency and communicate directly with our customers about how we centralize their data, how we build up profiles about them, and giving them choice around that. And specifically, we've seen that there's a real value in investing in building out these solutions and building trust with our customers. When we look at directly engaging with our customers and giving them that choice and transparency, we see a 40-time return on our investment here and the long-term strategic investment to connect with these individuals. So we see that coming through things like being able to increase our engagement with our customers, increase our database size, and give more choice and granularity and reduce overall unsubscribes. So we're going to talk a little bit now about the solutions moving forward from those challenges, the complex landscape, and think about how you can look forward and mobilize your teams to think about solutions for this new landscape. Again, we have the privacy compliance picture, but we also have the opportunity to use this to our advantage and move forward and develop a better customer experience overall. So, really looking at delivering more personalization and personalization that's delivered based on data that we might collect directly from the individual, right? That first party data that we have to drive a more personalized experience so the consumer says, oh, I understand where this data came from because I provided this information about myself at the right point in time in my relationship with your brand, with your organization. So it's really about uniting these opposing forces. And instead of pushing back against these regulations and against the technology changes that are creating disruption, making a real strategic change to shift and move forward. And again, if we draw out the real opportunity here, it's in these key areas of always thinking about compliance, thinking about security, making sure we're keeping a close eye on how data is collected, how data is used and changing hands. That's really at the core of how you think about your data privacy strategy. But we also want to make sure we're introducing that concept of transparency, right? Being able to show the user how their data is being used, being able to give them the ability to access that data, to change, redact, or remove that data if they want to have that done. and really building a better relationship over time with our customers by being clear and communicating about what information we have or what information might be added to their profile or to information we have about them to further deliver a better experience. So that's where we get into, again, this concept of collecting first party data directly from the individual. We know that our third party data sources are going to be reduced, and we have the opportunity to connect directly with our customers and start to build up some of that data. We can then use that information to better segment and understand our customers and perhaps drive marketing promotions or direct experiences that might fit their needs. Right? What are the needs of someone with a young family versus someone who wants to maybe spend time with your brand at different hours of the day? All of these types of information being built into a profile and connected to the individual directly can allow us to deliver a much better personalized experience based on truly consented and authenticated data that's shared. So when we think about bringing these concepts to life, this is, of course, a retail based example to think about how we might take a web interaction and ask an individual directly what types of things they might want us to focus on, giving them the ability to give us their choice and make a selection when they're interacting with us in that user journey on the left side here, and then feeding that information into a centralized portal where the individual can go back over time and see and manage their preferences. So, really developing a longer term consent and preferences strategy to deliver better personalization. And of course, this is an advanced ecosystem here to have all of this connected and informing insights. So, you just want to start by thinking about capturing consent, giving transparency, making that choice available, and then how you might store that information and potentially build up over time this progressive profile of adding in information, and then maybe getting to the point of surfacing that to the user and sharing that choice. Additionally, we want to think about the fact that timing is everything, right? Not bombarding people with all of the choices that they could make up front, but giving them the ability to build that up over time as they build trust with our brand. And thinking about capturing things in context, right? We don't want to necessarily ask someone everything up front, but at the right time, at the right moment, and building that and adding that to the profile. So that's a little bit to help us frame up the discussion, to understand how we are seeing folks approach both the challenging privacy and technology landscape, as well as some of the longer term strategic moves that you can think about to build up this information. And that's, of course, where tools like OneTrust and Okta come in to help you store the data and structure that to power kind of the back end and the organization of these strategic initiatives. So, with that, I want to reintroduce Neil to the conversation, bring him back in to share a little bit more information with us about how MLB specifically has embraced the strategy of consent and choice by using both Okta and OneTrust. So, Neil, maybe we can start off with another quick introduction, a little bit of background from your side of how you guys got started on this journey, and then dive in from there.
Sure, sure. So again, Neil Boland, I'm the CISO with Major League Baseball, responsible for information security at the league and across the MLB clubs and our other affiliates. And we started to look at OneTrust. We were already an Okta customer, a happy Okta customer, and we thought that OneTrust would be helpful as more and more regulation and interest in privacy began to surface, and amongst our team and our customers. And the path ahead for us seemed to, just like when we brought Okta on board for identity, because we weren't experts in identity, the path seemed to lead towards OneTrust as kind of the experts when it came to privacy and the relationship with consumers and consent and going through those workflows. So that's how we started our relationship with OneTrust as a leader in that space, very similar to selecting Okta as the leader in the identity space.
Great. Thanks for framing that up for us, Neil. So tell us a little bit about, especially in your role as a CISO, how has privacy compliance kind of entered that picture? Has that been a new development over the past few years?
Well, I think that, information security, data security, privacy are all obviously tightly interwoven. So when you're thinking about one, you should be thinking about the other. And that's really where we see it and how our team approaches that. So once you're thinking about it that way, you want a holistic program that, considers both sides of that coin. And, you can't do one well without doing the other well. So we tackled it from that perspective, weaving the privacy consideration into every aspect of what we're doing on the security side. And that's independent of, the regulatory requirements. It's just, the right way to approach that problem and, build trust with your customers.
Yeah, exactly. So pulling on that thread of kind of building trust, can you share with us how privacy and identity kind of fit together in this mix? And I think, just holistically for anyone who hasn't started down this journey, why identity plays such an important role in your strategy here?
Well, identity, is critical to us, for so many aspects of what we do. I originally approached it from the security side. We also approach it from the product and the business side in terms of like how we engage the consumer or our customers, our fans effectively. And those are not, mutually exclusive interests there. And if you do them together in a effective way, it's a big win, right? You're helping keep customers safe while also maximizing the value of what you deliver to them via personalization and some of the other elements you mentioned earlier in the conversation. Tying privacy into that is, I think it's a needed to play. I think your customers come expecting that not only are they going to have a robust experience, but it's going to be a secure experience, and their privacy is going to be maintained and respected, and they'll be in control of that. So to solve for all that, we have, as I mentioned before, partnered with the experts in that space with Okta and OneTrust now. And I think, it's working out very well. There are things that, we needed to solve for in that equation that were, immediately addressed by working with you guys as the experts. But there was more that we learned in the process, how to streamline it more, how to make it more effective, how to strike that balance between delivering on the value proposition I spoke about while also making it frictionless, or as frictionless as it could be for our fans, making it incremental as they wanted to do more. And and certainly from the management side of this, it could be a big lift without the proper tools. And we have a number of organizations or clubs that all have to participate in the process, and we wanted to make it easy for them to serve the fans. And we wanted a product that had the workflow capabilities and the monitoring and reporting and the configurability, if you will, to allow us to do that in a very productive format.
Yeah, absolutely. And Neil, would you mind elaborating for us on sort of the structure within the organization at MLB? How, as you mentioned, you have a pretty interesting structure with, your corporate office, but then also all of the different teams. So can you walk us through maybe some of the challenges associated with that and any advice that you would share to others that might be in a similar situation?
Sure. We have different brands, which are the clubs, and they are, organizations in, local markets that are interacting with fans just as we do digitally, and from a centralized perspective. And I think it's a very effective model. And it's has its complexities. That's for us to manage internally, and that's why we select great tools to help us do that. And that the process as it relates to Okta and OneTrust is that we establish that identity one time, and we leverage that identity across all of the different members of the organization, the different clubs, and that has different folks in different markets that have to manage those relationships, both at the central level they participate there, but locally. And we need tools to allow us to coordinate effectively on that. We may maintain data centrally that is processed on behalf of the local club, but they need the ability then to know when there's a request or understand, where the data lies, locally and centrally, and intelligently process that request so that the consumer is served. So there is that sort of interaction and integration, if you will. Clubs tend to also have different systems locally, which we needed a strong platform to allow us to begin that journey of integrating with those disparate systems.
Great. And when it comes to that, that choice and that consent that you're allowing individuals to interact and sort of say, hey, here are my preferences, or here's, what I think you can do with my data. Is that something that's spanning, as you mentioned, that can span across the clubs? Is that something that's spanning devices as well? Is this something you're doing across both, the web, digital properties, all the way to mobile devices?
Yes, so our fans interact with us in a variety of different formats, whether it's on a computer, a laptop, a iPhone, an iPad, an Android device, and our commitment to our fans is the same, around identity, security, privacy, and so working with Okta and OneTrust, we've been able to be effective on those different platforms in delivering on that privacy value proposition, that trust value proposition to our fans.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm curious, Neil, we see more and more interest from marketing departments as well in, in delivering a better user experience and really meeting the customer where they are. And I know it sounds like you all are doing a wonderful job there. Has your marketing team been involved in this effort directly at all, or have they expressed any, excitement around kind of having the solutions there to meet the customers where they are?
Yeah, previously for marketing, it's a burden, right? To be knowledgeable about, the various regulations and best practices when you're marketing to a variety or as wide a variety of fans around the globe that we do. And I would say that everybody was involved. Certainly our legal team, our marketing team, the technology team, the information security team, everybody played a role in putting forth the best, privacy program for our fans. And obviously the OneTrust team was very much involved in all of that, not only from like a technical perspective, but I think, going back to best practices from a best practices perspective. So I think we got the right team together, and we were able to meet our deadlines and get something that I think we're proud putting in front of our fans out there.
Yeah, that's great. And I think a lot of organizations are, I would say, potentially even envious of the state that you all have reached. Do you have any advice to others on how they might get the buy-in in order to invest these types of resources and really have this collaborative cross-team effort to get something up and running?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two ways to look at that, right? One way is to look at, privacy regulation and emerging privacy regulation that seems to now have picked up as we're coming out of the pandemic. So that's certainly a driver. But I think for us, it was more, do the right thing for our fans, to have a platform that's not only compliant, but, conducive to that level of trust and transparency with our fans. In terms of advice, what I'd say is looking at both of those drivers, right? Compliance and, a better customer experience. get help. Whether it's a company like OneTrust or a consultant who's knowledgeable in the space. It's really helpful to have somebody with outside perspective who's living this in terms of staying current with regulation and best practice to give you input, and OneTrust did that with us, and it was very helpful to get a broadened perspective. Another way is to certainly reach out to other customers that you see who are doing it well, and that was another thing we asked of OneTrust was what are other customers doing? What's the trend? How can we do this better, and demonstrate our intent here more clearly to our customers. So it was more than a technical exercise. I think it was a consulting exercise, and I think that part of it really helped us a lot.
Yeah, I think that's great advice for sure. Have you, I'm curious, heard anything from your fans or audience in terms of, the value that they place on trust or having the transparency with your organization? Have you seen any kind of feedback come in through there yet? I know we're ramping up towards opening day now.
Yeah, I mean, for baseball, we operate year round and have fan interactions throughout the year. I would say that periodically I'll see a question elevated for review, and fans are definitely interested, inquisitive. I think we do a good job of answering many of those questions up front. We have our legal team has put together a really great privacy policy that's visible and interactive in terms of getting fans what they need. And I think that uh, we have been responsive for the questions that have kind of made their way beyond that documentation, that material that we have there, and we learn from it. How do we make things clearer, or edge cases that we might not have thought about, that aren't necessarily something that's a compliance issue, but maybe a way to like improve the user experience. So fans definitely have a address to send those things to, when they visit that section of the site, and they do offer up, suggestions or provide comments, and we take those close to heart.
Yeah, no, that's great. I'm sure that you have a lot of trust from your fans, with the brands and with the clubs in general. So I think that's it's great to hear delivering back on that. In terms of, leveraging how you move forward, I mean, you've got this foundation that you've shared where you've got everything, well integrated. But as we mentioned, there's a lot of things changing, around all of us in many different areas. So, I think starting looking at the privacy landscape, have you started to think about how these sort of state by state laws and the introduction of that might impact your program? Do you anticipate big changes, or do you think you've sort of come to more of a streamlined approach across all of those regulations? Of course, taking into account that we don't have a crystal ball, so we don't know exactly what's coming tomorrow. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
I mean, I think the big thing for us was getting OneTrust in place and having that, as you use the word, foundation there. And, I think we're kind of ready for everything as a result. And so, we want to always do the right thing by our fans. And, we certainly want to make sure that we're compliant. I think between Okta and OneTrust, we have the right platform to do that, and it's powerful. I mean, when you look at some of the things that we had to solve for in terms of like making sure that we were validating identity in terms of the requester, and that we were syncing with the right records and all that, it's great to have Okta in place for that, right? And the fact that OneTrust had that integration, it was one less thing for us to do there. And as new things, come forward, I really don't see any of that taking us outside of the foundation that we have in place. It's just, maybe it's a tweak, or a new workflow or something along those lines. So I think we're quite ready for the road ahead, and we're going to look, continually to OneTrust to kind of help us stay on top of that as well. So, our legal team pays very close attention to, the regulatory compliance side of that. Um, and at the same time, we look to our partners to help us optimize around that and get ahead of it. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it.
Great. Yeah, that makes sense. And I know Okta's working on a bunch of exciting kind of changes coming out as well on the technology side. So anything, looking ahead that you're looking forward to, maybe even as things come out in the near future and in further embracing the identity picture and allowing that to kind of move you forward even more.
I think you touched on that a little bit earlier in your presentation around engaging consumers when you need to. And I think, the additional intelligence of the platform of, knowing, when to present options and, looking for opportunities to naturally stay ahead and on top of privacy, and the related compliance elements in the course of doing business with the customer. That's what I'm really excited about. So, that greater level of coordination, integration, and, engagement, if you will, is really what I'm excited about. And I love the fact that OneTrust and Okta are working very closely together with those types of outcomes in mind, because that, it's again less work that I have to do, and it's exciting. And you guys are the experts in those areas, so we look forward to leveraging that.
Great. And I have one last looking forward question for you, Neil. I can't come out of out of 2020 and maybe not ask a pandemic related question. So anything coming out of the pandemic that has changed how the digital experience of customers plays an important role, or anything that you're looking forward to as we hopefully turn the corner out of the pandemic now.
I think that, the pandemic helped spotlight digital engagement more than ever. And, even folks that were, less about digital, more about physical engagement, now see it not as a replacement, but complementary, in a lot of ways. So I think the customer base in general, across the world have learned a lot more about, a different way of interaction, or more, you know, involved interaction from the digital side and again in a complementary fashion. So we're certainly embracing that, and in every way that we deal with employees, with customers, with partners, and it's just kind of like a new but additional way of doing things and doing them better. It's always been there, but I think the pandemic has really brought that to the forefront, and smart companies are going to embrace that in how they deliver services going forward.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point, and certainly a huge opportunity, to connect the individual who's constantly got a device in their hand, right, with the in-person experience that they're going through. And what better way to engage with your customer than to bring those worlds together? So I think that's a great point. Great. Well, I think I got a great understanding of how you've been able to leverage the technologies together. Is there anything else you wanted to add? Any additional takeaways or points of advice? I know we covered that, but I definitely want to give you the floor to share any additional insight.
I'd say, keep up the good work, keep investing in the platform and these critical partnerships and integrations. Integrations are the key, to the extent that OneTrust is integrating with more of the mainstream partners that we're doing, business with, and as well as like some of the variety of back-end systems that we need to deal with to drive automation. I think automation is such a crucial part of this, as we go forward, and enabling that is really going to be a boon for your customers, right? And because if I can effectively integrate with those underlying systems and the variety of them and automate, it makes for a faster process for our fans and those that are looking to take action with their data. And we make sure that everything is 100% effective and buttoned up as well. And we minimize the opportunity for any type of error or thing or issue along those lines. So so that's my take on it. Like, let's keep expanding the range of functionality and the range of integrations across other products.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. Nothing kills a great customer experience like saying, thanks for your request. We'll get back to you in 30 days, right? So being able to mobilize on those requests and being able to actually action that and know where the data is and take whatever necessary steps are. I think that's an excellent point. And no two MarTech stacks today are the same. I think no two tech stacks in general at organizations are the same. So being able to have the interoperability between them, all of the different partners and vendors that play a role in protecting that data, but also moving effectively and efficiently to satisfy those customer requests and really take that data and engage with it and use it to the customer's benefit. I think that is a crucial point. So thanks for adding that.
Sure.
Great. All right. Well, I think with that, we will throw up some links and resources here. If you have additional questions, if we can help with anything, you can always hunt us down on LinkedIn, Stephanie Hanson or Hanson at OneTrust.com. I'm very easy to find. If you have any questions, follow up. And a huge thank you to Neil for joining us and sharing his story and insights. I think some excellent advice and really a great example for folks to take back to their leadership and say, this is where we could go, right? Investing in this strategic direction, it might take a little bit of time for us to mobilize and set up a cross-functional team to really get this going. But once we lay that foundation, look what this enables us to do. It allows us to be better prepared for the changing landscape coming at us. But more importantly, think strategically about how we might want to mobilize our data and drive that better customer experience. So, Neil, thank you again for sharing your story and your insights. And
No
with that,
problem. Thank you.
yeah, thanks everyone and enjoy the rest of the event.